Hello, everybody. This is Elena Bartash, your real estate investor, co-living real estate investor. And today, my podcast about co-living. And my guest, Franco Montana. Franco is property manager for PadSplit properties in Georgia. Hi, Franco.
Hi, Elena. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here with me, for being my guest. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time a lot. How are you today? How is your day?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah, everything's doing good. Like co-living is starting to become a popular strategy, and
Mhm.
so really excited for the future. But doing great, thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, I agree. And for us, very important, our business goes well.
Yeah.
So before podcast started, we were chatting with Franco a little bit. I know him a little bit, but not everyone knows Franco. Who is Franco? So Franco, could you please tell us who is Franco Montana?
Yeah. No, definitely. Thank you. So, a little bit about my background is I I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I have experience in about 15 different industries now. So I've done a lot of different businesses. I've owned a lot of different franchises as well. So my last franchise was T-Mobile. I did T-Mobile for 11 years. I had
Mm,
42 locations in California. So I did that business, grew it. I sold it in 2018. That was my last business that I had. I had 750 employees. And then I transitioned. I wanted to move into something that was less as active. As you can imagine, that's a pretty active business.
yeah,
And I wanted to kind of do
yeah.
something that was a little bit not as active. And, after searching, I ended up into doing real estate. I wasn't really originally planning to get into co-living because I didn't know what co-living was at the time. I kind of fell into it by accident in around 2020. So like right before COVID is when I got my first co-living properties up. And then I started I tried it out, got my first couple of houses up. I liked it during the COVID time, even like during all that uncertainty, it did really well.
Mhm.
And I decided to go all in. And so since then I've been adding to my portfolio ever since. I have about 150 rooms now in my portfolio, and my property management company with my partner, we manage about 1,200 rooms now.
Sounds awesome, really awesome. And you said you stepped into real estate how many years ago?
I just started in 2020, so about 5 years ago or so. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay, cool. And when you got your first client in PadSplit?
So I started managing. So originally, I was only investing in PadSplit. So I
Uh-huh.
had I had a property manager manage my properties because I just wanted to focus on growing the portfolio. And
Mm-hmm.
then when when as the model changed and PadSplit made some changes, I kind of wanted my properties to be managed a certain way. I learned like over time as your portfolio gets bigger, you kind of need to do
Mm-hmm.
different things. You can't just do the same thing. Like the way you manage a property when you have, let's say, 10 rooms or 20 rooms is not the same way you manage it when you have 150 rooms. And
Yep,
so,
yep, yep.
um, so I needed to shift, and that's when I started looking into actually managing it because I needed a system, a better system for scaling, to grow more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to design. And since I have a lot of experience in growing companies, I knew what I needed to do it. Not too many property managers know how to scale, so like I kind of didn't have a choice. So I started
Yep,
managing about a year and a half ago. So we grew pretty quickly.
great.
I've been in the business a
Yep.
while, so I had the opportunity to meet a lot of investors as they come into the business. And when they found out that I was going to be managing, they all jump on board. So I got a lot of investors that I know through the years.
Great dynamic, great dynamic. Yeah, thank you, Franco. So mostly my audience for this type of podcasts are real estate investors. So I suppose people who have pad splits or who are considering to step into pad split world, they
Yeah,
will appreciate information from you.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so yeah, Let's start from the beginning. Let's
Sure.
say someone is just considering to buy their first PadSplit properties. Could you please briefly describe what is perfect PadSplit house?
Yeah, definitely. So the number one thing I would say for a new investor that's looking to do a pad split or co-living property is just make sure you underwrite correctly. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see, and it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the hardest things you could to fix. Because if you make a mistake on your underwriting, you buy wrong, it's very hard to fix that. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
now what? So a lot of people ask me, well, Franco, what is the buy? Like, what is a perfect pad split? Well, it kind of really depends because each market is different. I have pad splits that work at 4 bedroom. My smallest is a 4 bedroom house, and it cash
Mm,
flows. I have 3 4 bedroom houses, and some of them make as much as my 8 bedroom houses, right? And
mm,
so there's no it's it's hard to say because it really depends on the deal itself. So that's why I say you have to underwrite because I have my biggest houses are 10 bedroom houses,
mm,
um, and like my highest performing house that I own is a 10 bedroom house that does $125,000 a year in rent in Atlanta, and so it's very hard to say. Like there's no actual set formula. You just have to actually underwrite the deal as it stands, and if
okay.
the numbers make sense, then you go for it.
Okay.
And so
So
like I'll
let's
buy all
say,
size houses.
mhm. Let me rephrase my question in this case. What are the factors makes pad split house good pad split house? What makes
Okay.
attractive? What we should check before we decide to buy this house, except numbers?
Yeah. Okay. So some of the things that you look for in each, again, this is also very market specific because some markets they have certain things that are important for that market. So right now we're primarily in Atlanta, so I'll use Atlanta as our example because I know that market well. And so like with
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta, for example, we parking is not as important. So like we only need to have maybe 4 parking spaces, including street parking, and that's enough.
Okay.
So if we have a 10 bedroom house, like 4 parking spots is enough. Compared to like a market, let's say like Las Vegas, if you have an 8 bedroom house, you probably need 8 parking spaces, right? Because a lot of people
Mm,
there drive, right? So like each market's a
yeah.
little bit different. You need to kind of really know your market. And I know if you're new, that's kind of hard to do because you won't know what you don't know. Um, but that's where if you work with, if you know other investors or
Mhm.
you talk with an experienced property manager, they could kind of give you some ideas on things to look for. So like that's one thing to look for is parking, accessibility. Where's the property located? Is it like deep through a lot of streets? Is it very easy to get to public transportation? Those are big
Mhm.
pluses. Is there any like amenities on the house? The sizes of the rooms, that sort of thing also plays a part, in the property. And each area also has different layouts. So like in Atlanta, basements are very common. So a lot of investors will look for properties with like basements. Where in other markets,
Mhm.
they don't have basements. Like if you go to Las Vegas, it's very
Mhm.
rare. They don't have basements. They do have some houses with basements, but it's very uncommon. So just gotta really know which market you want to get into a little bit, and then sees
Mhm.
what's working for investors in that market. Um, and then you kind of just go kind of from there. One thing I like to look
Okay.
for is space between houses. That's one thing I like to look for. In Atlanta, it's very common where the lots where I invest in a lot of more suburban areas. So there's like the lot
Mhm.
sizes are a lot bigger. So there's more spaces between houses. I kind of like that. I have less problems between neighbors with
Yeah.
issues. Like neighbors could cause a lot of problems. So if you have houses that are like on smaller lots that are right next to each other, sometimes you get issues with that. And so those type of things, like what's really important for me is really finding the layout of the house to make sure I could get enough rooms to make the
Mhm.
numbers work. That's one thing.
Mhm.
Then besides like the parking and the size of the lots, but those are some things that I look for.
Okay. Yeah, and like you just mentioned layout, and this is really important, right? So we need not only certain square footage or certain amount of bathrooms, but we need to understand how house were planned, what are the where all rooms are seated to understand
Yeah.
how many bedrooms we can add. Yep,
Yeah,
this is very
definitely.
important.
Yeah, doing that in advance, and making sure it has all the all necessities that you need. So like what I mean by that is like you'll see investors, and each investor is a little bit different. Like I don't do garage conversions. I know a lot of investors that do garage conversions. Well, they'll convert like
Yep.
garages into living areas,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't take into account like the AC. Like, okay, how you gonna cool this area? Are you gonna put a mini
Mm-hmm.
split? Are you gonna do like what are you gonna do? Are you gonna connect it to the main house? Are you gonna add ducting? Like, sometimes they forget certain things. Just make sure it's properly planned out,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid running into issues later. Because then you finish it off and then you find out you forgot something, like you didn't have enough electrical run to it, or you don't have AC or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Now you're gonna have to redo it, and sometimes ends up costing you a little bit more money. But I mean, no one's perfect in the beginning. Like when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. There wasn't much information out there. Co-living was not common, so I had to do a lot of experimentation and just figure it out. And it's just like any other business.
Yep.
Also,
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I have friend. She lives in Dallas, and she owns couple co-living properties.
yeah,
And she strongly suggests me to do camera plumbing inspection every time
yeah,
I buy co-living house, especially co-living,
yeah,
because whole plumbing system, it was made not for 7 people, for 8, for 10 people, right? It was made for 2, 3 bedrooms, for let's say for 3, 4 people.
yeah.
What do you
Correct.
think? Is it good advice?
So that depends on the investor as well. So, um, like I actually have houses on septic. I don't have many. I think I have two houses now. I had three. I converted one into and connected it to sewer recently. And I
Mm-hmm.
know like there's a lot of people say like, well, is it septic cause problems and stuff? And I did a lot
Mm-hmm.
of experimentation in the beginning. That's why I wanted to test it out and see how it's like. Um, because like the plumbing systems, like you said, they weren't designed for like having so many people. I
Mm-hmm.
don't actually run into many issues. The issue is more that it's an old system and you just need to update it. That's usually the problem. It's actually not the size of it. Uh,
Yeah.
that is the problem I run into. Is just like if it's a 1950s built house, the plumbing is 50 years old. It's probably going to be due at a certain point. So with me, with the type of properties I buy, because I do buy a lot of, really old properties that need a lot of big rehab. um, I already account for having to replace the plumbing system at some
Mm-hmm.
point. I don't always do it in the beginning though. Again, this is a different strategy for each investor. Like some investors like to change everything out in the beginning, and some will wait. I'm one of the ones that wait till I need to fix it, because sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
get a few years extra until I need to spend money to do it. But you could do the inspection. It helps a lot during negotiating, depending if you're buying on market or off market. Like if you're buying on market, it could help
Mm-hmm.
with inspection, like the plumbing situation, and maybe you get additional credits or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't usually kind of finance it. In the beginning, I usually budget it that I'm going to be replacing it at some point, so I don't usually kind of um, I don't do the inspection because I already know I'm going to replace it at some point. I don't know if I'm going to do it right then and there, or if it's going to be a little bit longer. And
Okay.
so my approach is different.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Great
Yeah.
advice. Okay. So you work with your own pad splits. You have clients who you manage properties for. Uh, do you remember any silly, or maybe not silly, maybe serious mistakes people made during furnishing or establishing property as an house after renovation? What
Yeah.
people really absolutely necessarily should to have in the house? What you
Yeah.
don't think that we have to have?
Yeah. So this really depends on, because we manage properties for different types of investors that have different styles. So we have some
Mhm.
investors that like to go nicer amenities. They'll have like full, like the rooms would be fully outfitted with like TVs and like, writing desks with a chair and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then we also have hosts that are just basic, where they just provide the room, the bed, the side table, the
Mhm.
lamp, right? Like, and there's no right or wrong way to it. To be honest, like
Mhm.
it really comes down to what they both work. It depends on like, is that your strategy or not? My
Mhm.
particular strategy is actually more the basic route. I don't do nice amenities, big fancy furniture or TVs or
Mhm.
anything like. I just do basic. And why I decided to go that route is what I found is scalability for me, because like as you get bigger, if you have a lot more things in your rooms, you're gonna
Mhm.
have to fix those the same way. So if you have like say 200 rooms and then the things like
Yeah.
breaking, you have these very specific items, that's a lot of items to fix and
Mhm.
replace. And so
Yeah.
to become more scalable, you have to adjust. Like it's almost like going very niche specific, like a Ferrari, or going Walmart, right? Like, you have to kind of operate differently depending on what your strategy is. So for me, it's going more scalable. So I have to operate it a different way. So I do more simpler. So like if a
Mhm.
bed frame gets destroyed, I have one in inventory, replace it the next day. It's very fast. Like, I need to replace a new mattress. It's not going to take me a long time to get a new one. It's very fast to replace.
Mhm.
It's not going to cost me a lot of money. Um, because one of the higher risks if you go nicer is those are the hosts where like now if they damage the property, they get a little bit
Mhm.
more concerned because the cost to repair it is going to be much more expensive. Like I
Yeah.
said, it's not right or wrong. There's pluses and minuses to both styles, is what I've seen. It's just a matter of what you're comfortable with as an investor. So now, mistake wise, the biggest mistake I've seen investors make is where they didn't fully think out their strategy. I've seen investors go very nice. Like we've had an investor where they put in gas fireplaces in their rooms and like do all these different things, like make it look really nice, and then they find out like, oh, they don't like that utility bill when it comes, and now you spend all this money on doing something that you decide that you don't want to do. So those are the biggest mistakes I've seen, is maybe they didn't fully think out their strategy, or they thought something else. But again, sometimes that's how you learn, right? Like, I mean, you learn over time. And I think the key, what I try to tell newer investors is, try to keep your learning to like where you're not losing a lot of money, where like, hey, you have these small little mistakes, maybe cost you a couple thousand or something, but it doesn't like
Mhm.
put you out of the game, right? It doesn't put you out of business. So you just refrain from making those mistakes. And rehab, I see common mistakes a lot where they overspend on the rehab. Like I just bought a property from an investor that I'm taking over because the contractor that they use ran away and didn't finish the property. They lost $60,000. And
Oh my
so,
gosh,
yeah. And
it's
so like those
crazy.
type of mistakes are the ones that will put you out of the game, where you didn't even get a chance to start. And so, as long as you kind of like, it's okay to make these small mistakes. These are learning lessons. Just try not to make really big ones that could put you out of business.
Yeah, it's too expensive mistake,
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
but we cannot avoid mistakes.
No,
Really, we
it's like
cannot.
with any business, even until now. Like even though I've been doing this for a long time, we have a lot of rooms. We're always learning, like seeing kind of what's happening.
Mhm.
There's always new things going on. The business is always changing, right? There's always new things that
Mhm.
are happening that are unexpected. Like I have a lot of crazy stories, and so that's just how you learn.
Yeah, and it's great you just touched base relationship with contractors. What
Yeah.
people should, what investors should pay attention while they hire a contractor for PadSplit for co-living property?
So one is like what I found worked for me is referrals. So, if
Mhm.
you have a contractor that worked with other investors that did pads that doing the same thing, right? So like, because not if a contractor doesn't know pad split, there's certain things that they might miss that they might make a mistake on, right? So if you have an investor that used a contractor to do a pad split before, that's always a
Mhm.
plus. They kind of have an idea of like what to do and what the property needs. um, And then you also have a little bit of a history, so I like to get referrals. Like, so I would say try to start out that way. It may not be the cheapest way, because
Mm-hmm.
some investors, like contractors that do PadSplit or no PadSplit, maybe they charge a little bit more of a premium, or they may not be the cheapest. But in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, it's more about learning. It's not about doing the cheapest, getting the maximum. That's how I approached it anyway. Is I just wanted to make sure, like, I learned the model, I understood it. Maybe I don't maximize on my first two houses, I'll maximize on my
Yep.
later houses, right? That's where I start. Like, as I learn the business, you become better, right? And just like
Mm-hmm.
with anything else. And so, I would say start with referrals to find, like, find some contractors, interview them, and then try to do it in a way. Like, one thing I like to do is, if I have a new contractor that I've never done business with before, I try to put them do it one part at a time until we're comfortable with each other. So I might test them on doing a bathroom. Like, okay, let me see, can you remodel this bathroom? Let me see how it goes. Does he do good work? Did they, hit their deadlines? Like, just kind of see how the relationship goes. And then
Yep.
as do more and you're more comfortable, then you give them bigger and bigger projects usually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Great advice. So we need to request from them several bits, right? For every
Yeah, you can
part
do.
of
Yeah,
scope of
every
work.
part. Yeah, the house. Because usually, like, if it's a big, like, if you're doing a big full conversion, they'll give you, a breakdown of what everything is going to cost roughly,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, what you could do is maybe break it up in stages, right? Like, you could do this first,
Yeah.
right? Like, do this first. Okay, if that goes well and you like how everything's going, then you do the rest of it, right? Like, you don't have to give them the whole project, right? Maybe you have different contractors do different parts. They don't like it. I'll tell you right now, like, contractors are not going to like that in the beginning. But, you know, if it's your first time and you've never done it before, like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to build the relationship, try to meet a few people. Maybe you break up the
Yeah.
project. If it's a big project, you break it up in different phases, and then you
Mm-hmm.
kind of test them out over time. Um, and so that way you kind of see, do you work well together? Do you like their style? Because it's not just them doing the work. It's like there's a lot more to it. For me, I also look at the relationship. Like, do we work well together? Right? Like, do they
Mm-hmm.
good work? Okay, do they? How's their pricing? It's not. There's like a lot of different factors I like to look into. Not just like, oh, they're the cheapest. It's like, okay, I'll give them the job. Like, there's several other things. Sometimes I don't always go with the cheapest contractor. I'll use some of these more
Mm-hmm.
expensive because I'm comfortable with them. I know they
Mm-hmm.
could reliable or whatever. So you kind of find out like what works for you, what you're comfortable with, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of go that route. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you so much, Franco.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about to split whole work into stages,
Yeah, because the
but
contractor
I
is
like.
always going to try to get the whole project, right? Because they want everything, right? They want the
Yeah.
big project. But the problem is if you've never really done, so if you, let's say if I was a IT programmer or something before and I've never remodeled a house, then you kind of want to get comfortable, right? Like, try to like do it
Mm-hmm.
small, learn kind of how it goes, and then see just to get comfortable, just to make sure that you don't find yourself losing a lot of money if
Mm-hmm.
you end up with a bad contractor that just doesn't do a good job or just leaves or whatever, doesn't complete it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those type of situations, you just try to want to minimize that loss as much as possible.
Yep. Yep. I agree with you. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay. So let's move forward. Let's
yeah.
pretend we already have a PadSplit house as in business started. We have tenants already. So what next? What is the best strategy for investors to manage this property? What they should what we should be prepared for?
So if you're managing the properties, it's just finding the right mix of members. It does take a
Mm-hmm.
while until your house stabilizes, is what I found, right? So let's say if you have a 7 bedroom house, or let's say 8 bedroom house, and let's say it takes you about, let's say, a month and a half or something like that to fill up the house. You're gonna, in the first couple of months, 2 or 3 months, you're probably gonna get a little bit of turnover until you could find the right mix, right? Like tenants that get
Mm-hmm.
along with each other, that they're comfortable with each other, they kind of vibe together. Like, it takes a little bit of time, and then once you get the right mix of tenants together, and they kind of work out their system, they get comfortable, then that's when the house stabilizes, and then you start getting those returns that you're expecting. So I mean, advice on that would just be just keeping an eye, making sure you have the right tenants. I think, like, if you keep bad members, so like one of the biggest mistakes I've seen investors do is they'll keep a bad member in a house because they're paying. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you could do.
Oh.
I see a lot of
Mhm.
investors do that, because you especially now, like, so like, say for example, if the economy is weakening a little bit, you're seeing higher vacancy, you're more tempted to keep people in your house longer, even though you're starting to see signs that they might become a problem.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so like investors, I see investors make that mistake a lot. um, and it could be their strategy. Maybe they want to do with it. You can, but like, we try to have that balance. And if we have a bad member that we think is going to be causing problems, we get rid of them right away, because evictions get very expensive. I would
Mhm.
say on average, if we had in Atlanta, if we had to do an eviction, it would probably cost an investor $5,000 to $6,000. Between,
Oh,
not
wow.
that's not just legal fees; it's the time of lost rent that you're not collecting, right? Like, because they're in there for who knows how long, right? Each county is a little bit different. Maybe it takes 2 months or 3 months. How much of rent is that, right? Plus any damage that you have to do if you have to replace any of the furniture, right? Like, so you kind of
Yeah.
want to avoid that as much as possible. And so if we have somebody that looks like they might become a problem, we try to get rid of them, as quickly as possible. But it's tricky.
Mm.
There's no clear answer to it. But I would say that is one of the biggest mistakes I've seen investors make. Is like,
Mm.
because if you keep a bad member there, what's going to end up happening is it's going
Yeah.
to spread, and you're
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah, yeah.
before you know it, you have a whole house of problems.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so my question in this case, what is the way to get rid of bad member? Because you cannot just kick them out because they
So with
pay.
the pad split model, you could ask them to leave. You could give them a notice to vacate, and they could move to another property. Pad split's that's one of the advantages with pad split. And so depending on the type of member, like they could just leave, right? They could just honor the notice to vacate and leave, or they could give you a harder problem, which that just
Yeah,
solidifies even more now that you know that they're a problem. Like, if they give you more of a problem than letting you leave, now you really know that you need to get rid of them. You know for sure that even if it leads
yeah,
to, even if you have to do eviction, probably it's probably a good idea to do it, because that's not a good sign. But you can ask them to leave, like if they're not a good fit, or there's whatever, there's issues. PadSplit has a lot of, there you have a lot of ability to ask a member to find another property and move to another property. I mean, and that's the advantage for the members too, is they have a wide selection of properties they can move to,
mhm.
so they don't have to stay in your house, right? So if it's not a good fit, they could go to someone else's house. So
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes
yeah.
sense. I
Yeah,
agree.
so that's what I would do: give notice to vacate, and then if they don't want to leave or they give you problems,
Mm-hmm.
then you might have to do an eviction. But it depends on the gravity of the situation. If it's somebody I really, really don't want to have in a property, then I will do it. But usually, I've been able to get them to leave with a notice to vacate. Like, if it's like a bad member, like, usually they'll just kind of leave. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had to really resort to having to do eviction, for those type, like, of really bad members, as long as it's
Mm.
non-payment, like, as outside of non-payment, like if they're just like rule breaking or something like that, usually we're able to get them to leave.
Yep. Yeah, situation could be different. How do you
Mhm.
handle, for example, if someone will bring service dog? Okay, all people love dog, but some people they have
Yeah,
allergy or some.
that
Did you
one
have
is
this
a
situation?
really tricky one, um, because when you have it, that that there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of that falls into a lot of different things. So it depends on where you're located, is one, right? Because depending on what state or jurisdiction you're in, like, they could be stricter or not as strict on that. PadSplit in particular had a lawsuit or issue they had to deal with, which is why they had to change their service dog guidelines. Now, as an
Mm-hmm.
investor, you have to weigh your risk profile. Like, do you want to deal with an issue if a member brings up, you know, like you denying them because of a service dog? Like, how much risk do you want to take, right? As an
Mm-hmm.
like as an investor, and each investor has their own answer for that, right? I can't answer for everybody else because you have to determine your own risk profile. Like, some investors, I talk to investors, are like, no, I don't care. Da, 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 da. They just try to get them out and they do crazy things to get them out. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, that's not my comfortability, but I've seen people do it, right? It may not be legal, but I've seen people do it, right? So how do I handle it? I follow the law. I mean, that's like, if you're going to build a big scalable business, you can't be doing crazy things that's against the law, right? Like,
Yeah.
putting your life, your as you big a bigger portfolio, you become more of a liability, and so you don't want to just hang out a sign as like, oh yeah, like, make it easy for people to litigate against you. You know what I mean? It's just, you have to be kind of smart as you build it. Now, if you only have one house and you have like 8 rooms,
Yep.
then okay, maybe you have a little bit more leeway, right? But it's not,
Mm-hmm.
that leeway starts shrinking as you get more rooms. You know what I mean? And so, we follow the guidelines as best as we can. If they say they have a service animal, there are certain rules and guidelines you have to follow. PadSplit has a guideline on how they have to verify, like certify that they are, uh, actually a service animal. And if PadSplit approves it, PadSplit approves it. You know what I mean? Like, and we have to deal with it, um, because it is a fine line. Like, trust me, like, we do rather not have pets in the house because it does cause some issues occasionally. But we do have some houses that have service. I have, on some of my houses that have service animals, and some of them are fine. Like, I've had like one tenant's been there several years already with me. The service animals, it's not as big a deal, but a lot of it is because of the way how we manage and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
we're in the
Yeah. But
properties more
but
often. Like, we see our houses
what
often, so.
about what about another tenants? Because really, people can have breathing issues sometimes in front of animals. How how
Yeah,
how to handle
so,
this?
and that's the tricky part. The problem is, on service animals, they have some really strong protections. And so you could use the reasoning, well, like they have an allergy or they have this and that. But when you do that, you are opening up yourself to risk. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? So you could consult
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
lawyer
yeah.
on that, right? Like, on how you want to handle that. But, um, we usually, we kind of have a conversation with the person with the service animal, let them know, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we have people in this house with a condition. We recommend you
Mm-hmm.
just go to another property, so then that way we don't have issues. It might jeopardize their health, and da, da, da. Sometimes they understand that, sometimes they don't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if not, we try to remedy it as best as we can. Like, either we relocate somebody, or we try to figure it out depending on what the situation is. But we haven't had any real big issues with service animals, to be honest. Like, it's not that. I know a lot of investors like don't like it, or like, I mean, and trust me, I'm not a big, huge proponent of it either. But, it hasn't really been a big problem. It's like, I mean, we have like some, like, we do limit it. I think PadSplit limits it to a maximum of two in one property. Um, and so, but what we found is like one or the other. Like, if we have a house with a service animal and somebody doesn't like it, they just move to another house. Like, that's, what ends up happening. Um, and
Yep.
then if we have
Any
somebody that has an animal that's really not a service animal, but they say it's a service animal, but PadSplit certified it, and then it starts causing damage, then now we have a reason to give them a notice to vacate. We start fining the member, having
mm-hmm.
them pay for damages. Like, we do all these other things to try to get that person to go. And usually that's enough to
Yep.
get them to leave.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or we have to file an
Yeah.
eviction. And at
Great.
that point, the eviction would be based not on the service animal, it's be based on how they're damaging the property, or what issues they're causing, or
Yep.
whatever. It's on something else, nothing related to the service animal.
Yep. Yeah. So many questions to discuss about PadSplit. It's interesting
Yeah, I
model.
mean, there's a lot of different little things that occur on the management side of it, right? Like, on the business itself. So,
Yeah. So what about let's talk a little bit more about management part. What are the most common issues tenants are coming with to you as a manager?
I mean, I guess the most common one would be like AC, right? That's a common one. Always complaining it's too hot, it's too cold in the same house. Like I say, some people it's too hot because everybody has their own temperature requirement. Like some people like it when it's 70 degrees, some people want it when it's 65 degrees, and some people like so. And then you have the climate always changing as well, right? Depending on the season of the
Mm-hmm.
year. So it's just so HVAC is a common complaint. Plumbing issues are always a common complaint. Member issues are always common complaints between members, like just all the kind of common stuff you would expect with these type of properties. And those are the common ones that you'll kind of run into. um, I would say those.
Okay, great. Franco, thank you so much. We probably
Yeah,
have 2-3 minutes left for our podcast. It was
yeah,
great podcast. Lots of valuable information. I believe
yeah,
people
yeah, no,
who are
definitely, yeah,
watching right now us and who will be watching us in the future, everyone will appreciate it. And guys, just wanted to remind you. So today my podcast about co-living. My guest, Franco Montano. Franco is property manager for PadSplit 5 properties. So far they work in Georgia, but I can open up little secrets. Franco has a plan to expand into Texas and couple other states.
yeah, definitely, yep. And we'll
Yep.
be going into North Carolina hopefully in the next couple months as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, guys, if you have any questions about property management for your pad splits or for your future pad split, please reach out to Franco directly. I'm going to put Franco's Facebook link under this video. So please reach out anytime, and Franco happy to answer your questions.
Yeah,
Thank you so
definitely.
much, Franco. Great
Thank you, Lynn.
time,
Appreciate
great
it.
podcast. Absolutely. As in conclusion, couple words about something, about whatever you want to share about PadSplit.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think PadSplit is a great opportunity for investors that are looking into co-living, because then you could focus. They take care of the booking side of it, so you could focus a lot more on just growing the portfolio. I think for those that wanting to grow a portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
working with an experienced property manager like myself or any other experienced property manager, I think would help a lot of new investors when you get started. Just because all the experience that we could share with new investors, we could give a lot of tips or help in getting started. And then down the road, if you want to go a different direction, you can. But
Mm-hmm.
it helps kind of new investors get up and running, especially if they want to start building a portfolio.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out. Like Elena said, send me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions or anything like that in regards to it. Franco at highestmanagement.com is a good email to reach out to me. But I appreciate it,
Oh,
and I hope I was able to provide some value to those that are listening,
yeah.
give them some
Beautiful,
insight into
Franco.
the management side.
Thank you so much for reminding me your website. I will
Yeah.
put not only your Facebook link, I'm going to put
Okay.
your
Yeah.
website link.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, thank you so much. It was great, and I appreciate Franco your time, and I appreciate you being today with me. It was great podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Guys, thank you so much for being today with us. Whoever watching us right now, or if you will be watching us in the future, please don't forget Franco Montana. He's happy to connect with you directly. So please check description to this podcast. You will find 2 links to Franco's Facebook and his website. And I am myself real estate investor as well. I'm always looking for extend my network with private money lenders, because my business model means I involve private lenders in finance for my property. So please reach out to me if you are interested to build relationship with a co-living investor. I do co-living. I do Section 8. So please reach out to me. I'm happy to know you, and I'm happy to know about your business model. And again, thank you so much, guys, to being today with us. Have a good night.